Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chesswise. Today we are at the second part of the Sicilian dragon. So we started the series of openings and mainly we are into Sicilian now, which is one of the main replies for black after the move e4. So today we will get into the Yugoslav attack and we will see what is the one of the main setup for black. So after nf3, d6, d4, we enter the open Sicilian. cd4, nd4, nf6, and c3, g6, and we reach the starting position of the Sicilian dragon. Last time we discussed what are the main ideas for black and white both. Today we will go into a specific line and see what black is trying to do after the opening. So white plays the move bishop e3. Do check out my previous lesson for the other details here like move ng4, white doesn't work, and the basics or the basic ideas of this opening. bg7, f3, castle, qd2, nc6, long castle. So black's moves nc6 and short castle are interchangeable. He can either do castle first or nc6 first. We reach the same position more or less. So as we know, white's main plan is to go h4, bh6, h5, open the h file, trade these bishops and penetrate with the queen on h6 and try to deliver mate on the black king. Of course, black will not make things that easy. We saw in the first lesson, if black plays slightly passively also, white's attack becomes very strong and white ends up getting into a winning position. Today we will see the main way for black, that is knight into d4. Okay, and then we will have third lesson later on which will cover the move d5. Basically long castle is intending to cover or control the d5 square. It looks like pawn can be taken after d5. Knight into c6, bc, and there are 4 attacks on d5, but black gets very strong play if the pawn is taken on d5. So after ed, cd, nd5, nd5, qd5, black has some strong moves like qc7, which is very strong here, and after queen a8 there is bishop f5, creating serious threat on c2. Of course, we will be discussing this line in far more detail, but at this point I wanted to tell you that grabbing on d5 is a very risky attempt. White should look at some other ways. So we will discuss that in our next lesson of Sicilian dragon. Let's go to the other main position for black today. As black knows that white wants to play bh6 and trade this bishop b into g7 and take the queen to h6, black tries to defuse that plan by playing knight into d4 first. This is another main position. Now bishop has to take on d4 because if queen comes to d4, then knight g4 and the important bishop will be taken. So bishop goes to d4 and now playing bh6 will not be possible very easily. White will have to look for other ways to open the position quickly. And here black goes for the move bishop e6. Very useful move. Bishop aims on the a2 square. Queen wants to now come to a5 and mostly the f rook comes to c8. Black's plan is very clear. Black wants to play queen a5, get the f rook to c8, make an exchange sack on c3 in many cases, and play queen into a2 and generate dangerous play. Especially if we see after the move kb1 here, there can be some combination possibilities after rook c3, queen c3, queen a2 check, kb, kc1 and bh6 check. So that can create very strong attack, and again rook c8 is there. So this is black's plan and black wants to create a strong attack on the white king. So at this point it's very important to stop the move queen a5, and here white has a very strong prophylactic move. Prophylaxis in chess means when we know that some idea is coming up, we play a preventive move. We think of that move as if it is going to come on the board and we try to prevent that. So here white has such a move kb1, very strong move, at first it looks like waste of time. King is being moved when we have to attack very fast. But this KB1 move actually gains or forces black to waste 2 tempi. So one move we are ready to waste, so that black is having to waste 2 moves. Let's see what is the main idea now. Basically white is getting his king away from C1. When after queen F5, queen into D2, he doesn't want to come with a check. So basically he stops the move queen A5. So this is the first opening trap here, serious one. Many people, sometimes good players also fall into this. Queen A5, but this is what I will say, any dragon player who has studied Sicilian dragon from books or taken proper training will of course know this trap. Okay, so now what white has got the move MD5, very strong. Using a discovered attack on the queen, and knight attacks the E7 pawn. Let's look at all the variations and understand. At least one pawn is lost in every line. So now after the move queen into D2, knight E7 check, king H8, rook has to take on D2, and white has to be little careful after the move rook E8, because knight D5 might allow BD5 in some cases, although it can be played, but white should first play bishop F6, knight is now guarded, so BF6 forced, and then come ND5. We should note that this backrank should not be allowed, of course. So after BD5, ED will allow backrank quite after RE1. So rook takes D5, and after the most obvious move BE5, protecting D6, white can play the good move G3, threatening F4, and soon this bishop will either go to C4 or E2, and the rook will come to H1. Sometimes the bishop comes to H3, stopping rook C8. Okay, so here after the move like rook D8, we can consider BH3 also, going rook D1 and then F4 soon. By the way, bishop I think belongs on this diagonal to F7 or A2 G8 diagonal. Bishop belongs there. So bishop C4 can be played, and then F4 and RH D1. And white is clearly better, he is a pawn up, and with rooks, the opposite colored bishop endgame may not be drawn. White will have very good winning chances. Let's look at other defenses for black. Knight D5, queen D2 is losing the pawn, of course, loses the pawn. So queen has to go back to D8, after which white has a very simple tactic, knight into F6. Of course, if bishop takes F6 now, then Bf6, Ef6 and queen D6, pawn is lost instantly. Black can set a small trap with the move Ef6. Well, we should also note that we don't want the black queen to come to A5 and open both these bishops. So white should play bishop C3, keeping hold of the A5 square, and even here after the trap B6, again taking D6 is problem, but white can do many things here. One is bishop F5, we can stop rook D8. Secondly, we can do queen F4, very simple, creating again double attack, bishop attacks F6, rook attacks D6, and at least one pawn will be lost and white is clearly better. So there are no issues over there. We can see that queen doesn't have A6 and A5 both because of the bishops, and he can't put pressure on the A2 pawn. So technically this position is at higher level, winning for white. Let's look at the main possibility for black, how black should play to reach a decent position from the opening. So after KB1, black has to slow down his plan of going queen A5, and he has to play the queen to C7 first. So black can get the queen to A5 only after the F rook has moved to C8. So the basic idea is after H4, rook F C8, now black is ready to go queen A5, because now what will happen? Whenever queen A5, ND5, queen D2, NE7 check is there, then black has got KF8 attacking the knight. So white has to recover the queen, and the knight on E7 will be lost. So that will be a blunder for white if he plays ND5. Okay? White plays the move H5. White is all set, and he is trying to attack faster. Now there are two ways. One, black can play the move queen A5, which happens to be the main move. And secondly, he can take knight H5. Knight H5 leads to a losing position for black. It's a very similar idea. but we have to do it in slightly different way. There comes bg7, knight g7 allows qh6, nh5, g4, leading to the same position. So kg7 first, g4, knight f6, queen h6 check, kg8, and here we should go for the move e5 first. e5, attacking the knight on f6. f6 is the defender. If the knight moves, then queen h7, king f8, queen h8 waits. So d forced. By playing e5, this diagonal is opened. Okay, it's a clearance sacrifice. And now after the move g5, knight h5, rook takes h5, g takes h5, and now the bishop lands to d3, and the position is totally lost because h7 cannot be protected. If we go f5, then queen takes e6 check, king h8, and now slightly stronger is the move bishop f5. If queen f5, then e6 allows the queen c7 queen to defend h7, and now the threat is rook d7 followed by qe7, and if rook comes to d8, then queen f7 exploits this pin, and after rook d1 and d1 we see that there is no way to stop the mate on h7. If black plays the move f6 here, there are many ways of winning this position. One is gf, ef, rook g1 check. Now after king h8, queen f6 followed by qg7, qg7 mate. So king f7 forced, and then comes rook g7. And now we see that the queen can be taken followed by queen f6, which wins the game very easily. So king e8 forced, then rook c7, qc7, and qf6. So bishop is attacked and queen h8 is threatened. Also bb5 check is threatened, and white will win the game very easily. Let's see the main move for black now. After h5, black should not take nh5, and he should go for his own idea, queen a5. And here of course there are many lines. There is h into g6, there is h6, there is a3, stopping rook c3. Right now black has a threat. Rook c3, queen c3, queen a2, kc1, and he can use the move bishop h6, exploiting the diagonal. So white can diffuse this bh6 in two ways. One, hg when the rook controls h6, or the move h6. The line I am recommending now is basically slightly positional in nature, and what it will do is the kind of attack that black wants in this position, we will refrain from giving him that, and white gets a very nice endgame over here. So white can go for the move h6, forcing bishop h8. Bishop has to remain on this diagonal, and now white goes for the move a3, first stopping the threat of rook c3, and now after the move rook b8 or b5. Mostly they play rook b8, then b5, b4. That is what happens to g4. But the point of h6 is white is looking for a tactic here, b into f6, forcing bishop into f6, and the point of h6 is revealed, the move nd5, 2d2, and now in the variation nf6, because if the pawn is not on h6, if it is like this, then king comes to g7, and after rook d2, king f6, and the king becomes well placed. But here firstly we are denying kg7 and forcing black to take ef6, and after the move rook d2, white gets a very pleasant endgame, and throughout he will be slightly better. There will be lot of pressure on d6. One of the plans can be going bb5, bishop a4, bb3. Of course we will not allow bb3, cb3, so we can go here. Instantly we can go for the move be2 followed by rook hd1, putting pressure on d6. Black can try rook c5, rook h5, which can be stopped by the move g4 if the h1 rook is not there. And white's play is very decent, and we can say that we can look for a good game here. White has one of the plan to go b3, kb2, and c4. We have to be careful about this bishop. This bishop should not end up as a bad bishop. So white can look for the moves b2, g4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, But this bishop will become bad only if we play the move c4. So white will not play the move c4 very easily. He will try to get rook h d1. When black will have to defend things like this, and then even the position with bishop on e2 can be considered. This also gives a nice decent position. Here we can go for the move c4. When the bishop we are thinking it's bad, but c4, b4, kb2, kb3, and white can aim for the move. See, here is threatening c5 already. So after rook c6, b3, then kb2, and then eventually we can try to play the move b4. So white has a pleasant bind on the black position. And we can say that the game is slightly better for white from here on. Do note one thing, these openings, of course, this can be played at a very high level also, but when we are new to the game, against any 16, 17, 1800 or 2000 level player, these positions are absolutely okay, and white can feel absolutely safe when playing these positions. Okay, I hope you are enjoying these lessons. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.